another Monday night edition of the People Show with Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas right here on IntellectualRadio.com. We're live on Facebook and YouTube as well. Our call-in telephone number here is 708-223-8953. Hey, Charles.
Hey, how you doing, my friend?
Man, I'm doing great. Before we get started, I'm going to give a big shout out to all of my family back in Florida, Richmond Heights. Boy, did we have a big shindig this weekend.
Really?
We had our
family reunion, huh?
We have our annual, this was the 8th annual town. They call it the Richmond Heights One Love Reunion out on the park. And
it's a community, not necessarily family.
It's not family. It's the community family.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And man, 5 generations going back 71 years is when that community started.
And that's rare because, we're I think all of us of all stripes,
Yes.
Really, we're all losing that sense of community. I mean, you grow up in a neighborhood in the city, you might not know your next door neighbor. You might not know, I don't know the people in the apartment next to me. Mm-hmm. Or across the hall.
Yeah. Well, a lot of that, some of that exists now because like Chicago is like one big city. It has different, communities in it, but, it's just a part of a bigger city in areas like where we are in Miami, Florida. They're demarcated, right? Thoroughfares don't go through the community. Right, thoroughfares get you to the community, but not through the community. So,
so that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I think it's a very good thing. I think by design, or if it wasn't by design, it worked out to be a good thing. So, and many of us, as I said, we did not learn about the history of our communities. We didn't learn about it in school. Our families didn't teach it to us. I learned about the history of my community after I got out of law school.
Yeah, I'm still learning the history of the community in which I grew up. It's fascinating, the first people to come there and what my ancestors,
Mm-hmm.
I actually have a picture of my great grandfather, a photograph. It's amazing. I mean, not too many of us can do that. But I have it, and I have one of my great grandmother, and I was looking at them this past week, and I was thinking about all the young men who don't even know their father, but if you don't know your father, you don't know your grandfather, and what your grandfather did and what he accomplished, and I think you lose a real perspective on life if you don't know where you came from, your ancestors. I mean, in Africa, ancestor worship is it's what happens. They over there, they worship their ancestors.
Yeah, I think that the guy who does Finding Your Roots, Louis Gates Jr.,
sure,
who does the show. I think it's very interesting. It's very good. I'd like to see him do Finding Your Roots of just some ordinary people, but all of his are basically people who are celebrities and that sort of thing. But I'd love to see them do some of those on just some ordinary people. I think you'll find some extraordinary people within their lines. I think there's extraordinary people in all of our lines. Some history that has been lost and some that has been erased, but I think it's very interesting. But the community that I grew up in, I think as we find out more about how it came about and what it was, I think those of us who go back have that much more of an attachment to it, because our community is 71 years old. My father bought our home 71 years ago. He was a military veteran out of the U.S. Navy, because you only could purchase a home in that community if you were Black and a veteran of the military.
There's my great grandfather.
Wow.
1890s, they took this photo. He was a chemist.
Yeah.
And he worked for a candy company.
Sharp-looking guy here.
Yeah, he's sharp, man. I mean, look at how he's dressed.
I don't know if you all can see that.
Look at how he's dressed, man.
But
I think family going downhill, sister.
Well, let me tell you, in the 40s, I did a little looking back, and then if you go back, and even in the 40s, people were going to work if they worked in factories and that sort of thing. Coming out
Sure.
of the New Deal and people moving from one state to the other to find work. People would dress to leave home to go to work, and when they got to work, they changed into their work clothes,
Right.
and then after it was over, they changed. So when people were walking down the street, you didn't know the executive from the laborer back then. So dressing was a big deal. Even going to sporting events, people wore suits and top hats going to sporting events.
Yeah, but we've really embraced, I think, this generation
Yes.
has embraced this whole casual piece. I mean, to no end. I mean, you go in a restaurant in the city of Chicago and you're going to spend at minimum, $75, $100 for a meal, and people are sitting in there, in their jeans and sneakers and a t-shirt, and you go like, whoa, wait a minute. I like the idea when people dressed up.
I like the idea when people dress anyway, because it governs how you walk and how you behave. I walk differently. I carry myself differently when I have on a suit. And I used to wear one every day, but I don't do that much. There are some. It's funny how some people have never seen me in casual clothes, and there's some people who have never seen me in a suits. But I think that the way you dress certainly influences how you carry yourself. And I am from, I guess if you want to call it the old school, I believe that when I go to formal events, I should be dressed appropriately, formally, right? I'm not into the zoot suits and the multicolored. You
don't have those, you don't have one of those 10-button jobs.
No,
like they come down to your knee.
No,
from the west side, and you go into the stepper set, and
No. Well, now it's a whole different thing. No, I didn't have that back then. I'm into, listen, I believe in a well-dressed man, and I don't think that there's anything like a well-dressed black man. I don't, you can't even compare them. But yes, I went to a restaurant. My wife and I went to a restaurant a few months ago, and I had never been there, to the Chop House. I'd never been to the Chop House, and in the Chop House, they have a sign up. These subtle signs that says, "Please refrain from using your cell phones," because I've always thought it to be odd, even before we had cell phones, to see people at dinner or in a restaurant, and they don't even engage with each other. I was like, well, why are they out? In my mind, I used to wonder, why are they out?
Texting each other across this.
Right.
Man, I used to have a brother that I used to, I worked with him, and we would go out to dinner at work because we worked at night. And man, this brother would be on the phone. Man, he'd be on his phone, man, talking to his wife. And he had a real loud voice.
Yes.
He's talking to his wife. And sometimes, man, the conversation would get about last night. Hey, brother, what's up, man? Anyway.
Yeah. So, but yeah, those traditions, I think, unfortunately, we let them get away from us, and those traditions helped to shape character.
Moving on, man.
Yeah.
Moving on. You, big week. I mean, you were gone. There was one story that I read that struck me as something that you would be very interested in, and it was a leak, apparently, from the United States Attorney's Office regarding the Safe Speed company, the company that you've been at this, you've been in contention, let's say, with these people for a long time, particularly on the red light cameras, speed cameras, and all that bit. But apparently, there's a tape of it was reported that there is a tape of the Safe Speed, would it be CEO?
Yes.
Yes, on tape, talking to one of her minions about
one of her partners.
Yeah, one of her partners about getting equipment placed in certain places. And
Well,
You explain it better.
Yeah,
than I
she
do.
had long Safe Speed LLC, which is owned by Nikki Zolar, who is a um, well-connected.
I call her a long-time political
political
operative.
operative, and who was basically unemployed in 1998. Now she is the head of one of the biggest red light camera companies in Illinois, but her company is tied to multiple federal corruption cases, more than a dozen political politicians and business people who have been indicted and convicted of corruption between them and this company. She has long contended that this was a sole operative of her partner, founder, Mani.
She was never implicated legally.
No, she was never implicated into this up to this date. However, with this last leak of a conversations that were had between, and she was considered to be the person A in this last drop, that she knows more than what she contended that she didn't know.
Which you have always suspected.
Which I have always suspected, that, it is unlikely, highly unlikely, that in such a small firm, this was not, they've taken a lot of money, but it's not a big firm of people, and somebody is doling out all this money that you don't know anything about. Well, this last leak or disclosure shows absolutely the opposite of that, and I think that she has some concerns, and she ought to, and I think there are some problems. But I think the bigger thing for me is that this system demonstrates to me that the more people that they catch and the more people that they indict, that there's no fixing this system, that this system was fixed for that kind of corruption. It was birthed in Chicago and has spread out to the suburbs on steroids. And we as the people are paying for it. And the community that they're talking about is Crestwood, which is a community that we have a class action lawsuit standing right now. Now, I make no delusions about political and criminal corruption does not necessarily, has any weight on the civil liability. So I don't want people to think that it's a slam dunk. Just because they found corruption doesn't mean that that there's some automatic liability in terms of the civil suit.
But let's assume, let's say she's indicted. So now it goes all the way to the top. What difference is that going to make, or should it make, to these cameras and such that are all over the area, as you pointed out, suburbs as well as the city now, maybe more in the suburbs?
Well, not more in the suburbs, but likely the difference that is going to make, we really don't know. But based on what we've seen happen in the past, that not much difference. We would hope that we have people in place to say, you know what, we cannot allow for our government to support racketeering and open corruption within our states and our municipalities. We would hope that we have people who are in a government that would have that kind of decency and that kind of character to say, yes, our municipalities need money, but we can't allow for people to,
Let me ask you this. Yeah. Have any of these 9 candidates for mayor of the city of Chicago vowed anything really regarding speed cameras and red light cameras?
Well, there's one person who have vowed that they would get rid of them, and that's Willie Wilson. I've had conversations with others who have said that, they certainly will take a look at it and they hem and hawed. But to me, it's a right and wrong.
Right.
Right. It's a right or
words,
wrong
they just
thing.
said, no, I'm not going to do
Right.
anything.
Basically. So they look at, the governments need money. Well, sure, they need money, but, so do people need money. But and my contentions is that just because you need the money, we should overlook the illegality of it.
Now, can the mayor unilaterally get rid of these things,
Yes.
or does he have to go to the council?
No,
or she have to go to the council?
The mayor can shut it down. We found this out, that the mayor can shut it down. Even the governor can shut it down. Right, the governor can shut it down if they find that. There's several layers, but if they certainly find that there is corruption, as been well noted, the governor has the power and the responsibility constitutionally to protect the people from this type of criminal activity.
Why isn't he doing it? He won by a landslide. He not politically unpopular to do it. It wouldn't be. I don't think so. I think people would love to see those cameras shut down.
I think that no, there would it certainly would not be politically unpopular to do this sort of thing, but they give us all these excuses as to Chicago is a home rule and that sort of thing. I said, well, it's not a separate state; it's in the state of Illinois, and so in Chicago doesn't have home rule to sanction corruption, does it? No. So. But why they don't do it is beyond me. Why we don't shut down, and it's a poor example, to ordinary people to say, on one hand you're going to get tough on crime, on the other hand you're just going to wipe it away.
You got basically one party rule. You've got your county board president, you've got your mayor, you've got your attorney general. Certainly, at some point he could actually step in.
Yes.
If there's some
he's supposed to
shenanigans going on, the governor, they're all part of the same deal. They aren't, it seems like it would be a simple thing for them to all be on the same page. They wouldn't have any Republicans trying to stop them. Certainly no Republicans with enough power to stop them.
The Republicans would be fully on board with them. This is largely something that is sanctioned and supported by, when you want to talk about party, by the Democrats. Republicans, every Republican that I have ever spoken to regarding this issue is against this issue.
You mean against speed cameras?
Against red light cameras and speed cameras, because they see it, one, as a tax. First and foremost, they see it as another form of a tax, which it is, another form of a tax. It's not a safety producer, so it is another form and layer of a tax. And the mayor of the city of Chicago, this mayor, let the cat out of the bag at a groundbreaking ceremony. That she indicated that during the pandemic, when everything was shut down, the city lost a great deal of revenue through the hotel tax. Which they use to fund these artistic whatever that they had vowed to put $10 million a year in. Well, she said we had to make an adjustment. She didn't say what the adjustment was, but you put two and two together. She decided to lower the threshold of getting a ticket from 10 miles an hour to 6 miles an hour, and they raised $53 million in under a 10-month period from $35 tickets.
That's a lot of tickets.
It's a lot of tickets. They went from giving 1,100 tickets a day to 11,000 tickets a day, a ticket every 12 seconds that they were.
And the machine is basically issuing the tickets, not a cop or a safety officer. It's a computer generated ticket from that camera.
Well, it's not a computer generated ticket. It's an event that it generates, that takes a video and a picture, and there's supposedly these three independent people who are looking at this event, and they make a determination on whether or not it is a violation.
Really, 3 people? 11,000 tickets a day? How in the world did they look at them all?
Exactly. Which we have been saying that this whole system is one that has no real oversight. We don't know who these are civilians, and we don't know who they are, who sanctioned them, who they or any of that sort of thing. Now, in the other municipalities throughout Illinois, they have police officers that actually view the videos because the state statute says that you can't issue a moving violation if you're not a peace officer. That's the law.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, Chicago, being home rule, had the law manipulated. But in other municipalities, the videos are reviewed by police officers. I'm not saying that the police officers doing any better job at some of these other places than they are in Chicago, but it is just beyond any reasonable imagination that 3 people can look at all of these videos and determine that there is
it's
a
not
violation.
It's not a big campaign issue. I don't see the candidates talking about this all the time. It's a huge amount of money, and it's something that affects individual taxpayers,
Right.
Certainly, right over the head. I mean, they hit you with one of these $150 tickets or whatever they are. I mean, man, that hurts. That hurts right in the middle of the week, man.
Well, there was an analysis that was done by ProPublica and the University of Illinois at Chicago that showed that even though the cameras are sort of evenly dispersed based on the landscape, but where they are targeted in certain communities, that the poorest communities in Chicago are being ticketed at twice the rate than other communities,
and that's still going on.
It's still going on.
You know, that's amazing. I mean, this isn't going to help. Certainly isn't going to help Mayor Lightfoot, but the other 8 candidates. You notice the transition I'm making here.
Yeah.
The other 8 candidates still out there. There's still a spirited race for mayor out there. I'm getting all these polls, man. These polls are like North Pole and South Pole. One poll will say Chewy's ahead. Another poll will say Vallis is ahead. One poll had Lori Lightfoot, of all people, ahead. I think that there's a lot of shenanigans going on with the polls.
Yeah, but everybody's doing their own polls,
exactly.
Right? Everybody's doing their own polls, so it's like grading your own news, your own paper.
And as I have my experience with polls, and working inside campaigns, they are so easily manipulated. People understand it. The polls that they report, I got to say, all of them are so easily manipulated. They never ask one question.
Right.
It's always 10. And the question that really counts, who you're going to vote for mayor, usually around 6 or 7 after they've softened you up with the other questions.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it is such a scam.
It is
incredible.
It is a real scam. Somebody's making a lot of money off of it, getting paid handsomely off of it. But I think at the end of the day, because of all the different uses of communications that people use to communicate, some people communicate through text, some people, talking or emails. So it's I think, very unscientific today to really put any kind of, hope into a poll, or even be able to measure something, to say, okay, this is, the way that this is going. And you can be relatively certain that it is pretty close. But today, none of that. It's just fodder. It just doesn't matter. The only poll that matters is after the votes are counted.
Classic example. I mean, a poll can ask you about crime for 5 questions. Crime. So they've made crime the issue.
Right.
Who you want to vote for mayor?
Yeah.
Well, one of the candidates who was talking about crime, because we just talked about it's such a scam, man. It's such an incredible scam.
I think it's a scam, and it's an insult to the average citizen that this is what we are being bombarded with, and how we are being insulted of people who are making decisions over our lives.
But I tell you, man, there's a what did I read a poll? It was just a report from the City Board of Elections that turnout, early voting is brisk, that there is a lot of comparing it to 2019, we're way ahead in terms of early voting in 2023.
You mean for a primary?
No.
Or for the mayoral election?
The first round.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that it's up like considerably.
Mm-hmm.
And that a lot of mail-in ballots have been shipped that are going to show up, obviously, later, after Election Day. But, man, that's interesting because now we could be just shooting our wad.
Mm-hmm.
Those who are going to vote are voting early, getting it over with. And on Election Day, you're not going to have much going on. But at this point, it looks like turnout's going to be larger than a lot of people would expect because of what happened in November.
Well, that I'm not so sure that the November election is going to have an impact here in Chicago. I'm not so sure that that's going to have a big impact. I think that the first week there was a story that said that in the first week there were 40,000 mail-in ballots or something like that, and 2,000 people actually walked in and voted at the super site. Now, I'm moving around and I'm looking at the early voting locations, and I'm going to be doing that on Election Day, right? But I'm not seeing a lot of heavy traffic.
Well,
I'm not
seeing
a lot of
traffic,
heavy
but
traffic.
That they could be mailing them in. Now, here's another theory that is it 16 open city council seats?
16, yes.
16. That each one of those seats will have 4 or 5 people running. All those people are on the street shaking trees, getting people out to vote. So that's a lot of people working the street. Then you have the Chicago Teachers Union, which is legendary for being able to get people out on the street. So there could be a lot of street activity going on that we can't see,
right?
Because it's mail-in.
Sure. I would say that you're probably more right than not on that. So, and that is probably the reason why we're not seeing a lot of foot traffic, and even more so of a reason why we're not really going to be able to really get a snap picture of what or who is really, the front runner.
You trust vote by mail?
Yes.
You do? I don't.
Yeah. I
have never done it. It's just that living in Chicago and being around.
See, you just segregated to Chicago.
Yeah.
To Chicago. But we haven't had any evidence. We haven't had any evidence ever of there being any type of shenanigans with vote by mail or that sort of thing.
Well, this point. Just that I don't trust the powers that be in Cook County, and it bothers me. So I probably would never do it. I would rather go to the polling place and go through and stick my thing in the box.
Yeah, but the vote by mail is the same thing as
I know, but like I said,
as the day.
Here's the other thing, man. I mail nothing. Man, I mailed a check to the IRS last September. Checked on it at the deadline. It had not arrived at the IRS. Now, I'm talking the IRS. I don't play with the IRS.
Mm-hmm.
I send the IRS their money first, right?
Right.
And render unto Caesar, right? But man, they didn't get, and they never got the check. Never received it. So I had to go online to pay it that way, which I should have done at the beginning. I was
going to say, why not just do it online?
I am. I will never mail another check.
Yeah, you'd certainly be assured that it would be paid then.
Yeah, and I wouldn't mail a ballot. I mean, I wouldn't mail anything at the post office, man.
I don't mail payments to the government that I have to pay, like my real estate taxes. If I'm, to the wire, because I just absolutely believe that it is against my religion to give the government any more money than I am
and to give it to them early.
Yes. So I'm not paying you a dollar more than I'm supposed to pay you. So I will go down to the county and stand there.
I've done that.
And pay them separately. Get a receipt. Okay, here's the next one. Get a receipt. Now, some of the clerks get annoyed, but I don't care you get annoyed, because I want to make sure you get it right, because I don't want you coming back to me, because they make all kinds of blunders, right?
Yeah.
They're human beings, right? They make all kinds of blunders, but if they make a mistake, you pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I had to pay.
I'm in agreement with you.
Situation by the time I actually went online to pay it, it was 2 months of interest.
Yeah,
added to it.
Yeah.
So, man, I don't mail anything, and would not mail a ballot. Going back to the original point, I just don't trust the people in charge in Chicago. I just don't do it.
I understand. And with good reason. I understand. When we look at all kinds of things and practices of, behaviors that would lead you to not trust that, I, to some degree, certainly can appreciate that. Like, with this whole camera situation. Mayor Lightfoot made a statement on the south side of Chicago in the front of a predominantly black audience that said that any vote for any other candidate that's not named Lori Lightfoot is a vote for Chuy Garcia and Paul Vallis. I was out of town when that statement was made, but when I got back,
she said, if you don't vote for me, then just don't vote.
Well, she said,
that was a bottom line. What she said,
or stay home.
Which is don't vote. But she's reached, I think, desperation mode, and it's tragic. Even though there was a poll that I read today that had her up there in the top 3, really in contention with either Chuy or Vallis for the number 2 spot. I think Chuy, this poll was ahead, actually, which I don't see either. And she was finishing a close third. It was a real tough horse race between her and the second place, either Vallis or. But anyway, I don't see it. And I don't see Chuy. I don't see his impact anywhere. Maybe it's me, because, when we get into social media, we start looking at, we find ourselves in an echo chamber sometimes. And I just haven't seen the momentum of his campaign. And I've known him for a long time. And I like the guy. He's a good guy. He and his wife, wonderful people. But he just doesn't seem to be translating to.
I think that Chuy is hanging on to a message that he is trying to play to the older black voter. He is not even concerned about the younger black voter. And the reason why I say that is because he keeps hanging on to this Harold Washington connection. Younger black voters only know about Harold Washington's name.
They only know from a book.
Right. So the older black voter, which most of them that were around then, many of them are deceased. Because Harold Washington would have been 100 this year. So, and one of the biggest advocates, and I'm just shifting a little bit, one of his biggest advocates for maintaining his legacy, she made her transition. Heart just gave out on her. She was 96 years old. Josie Childs, and who I used to talk to every other day. And I got a phone call Monday morning that they found her in her place, and her heart had just given out on her. And she was strong, vibrant up to the Saturday before that. But she was 96. Right. And a lot of the people who work with Harold, they're up in age. So I think maybe he's using that to play to that. But those people are not, in my view, supportive of Chewy because they know about his history, that he hasn't really done a whole lot that Black people can say that, that they're give any reason for them to support him.
And they also know that he was not NOT a prominent player in Harold Washington's administration. He just was not.
Well, Harold Washington brought him in.
Yeah, he was
Harold Washington brought him in because he needed the vote.
How old is he? He was what? I mean, he was 21 years old, and I think he was elected in 80. Was it 87?
Yes.
Yeah. So he had 6 months to be part of the Washington.
Right.
What is it?
26
force.
Yeah. But he didn't play a significant role in any way, shape, or form in terms of there being anything significant to the Black community that people can point to and say he was there for the Black community.
Something got it. The whole. I don't want to digress, but maybe for a few seconds. But the whole Harold Washington piece and what we understand of it and how important it was. I mean, there would be no Barack Obama had there not been a Harold Washington, right? Mm-hmm. It would not have happened.
No.
And it's kind of like John the Baptist preceded Jesus Christ as a prophet. Mm-hmm. Let's just take it there. He baptized Jesus Christ. But nobody's singing hymns about John the Baptist. Same with Harold Washington. We understand his importance. But if anybody I don't mean to created is not the good word, but there would have been no Barack Obama without Harold Washington. And in fact, Barack came here after Harold was elected in 83. That's when Barack became interested in Chicago because he saw possibilities here that he wouldn't see anywhere else in the country. Mm-hmm. This kid from Hawaii. Mm-hmm. But we don't, again, Barack is history. He is one of the most prominent Black Americans to live
today
in this country. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But nobody talks about Harold. I mean, you can go to Dallas, Texas. I don't know who Harold Washington is. And they certainly don't understand his significance to all of this. But we do. And but for those who want to deify Harold Washington, like Chewy Garcia, and a lot of the old folks.
I don't think they want to deify him. I think they just want to use him.
Well, I just use that as an expression that they put him up on a pedestal.
Only when it's convenient.
When it's convenient, but I just don't think it works anymore.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. In particular, when you don't have a real history with Harold, when you don't have a solidified history of accomplishments with Harold, you can't just throw his name around. Just like this mayor.
But
this mayor, she's done it.
She throws it around.
She's thrown it around. She's even said that she was in the back of the room when Harold Washington was elected. She was nowhere even near Chicago.
But there's a lot of other politicians, Black politicians, older politicians in particular, who still, harken back to the Washington era. I mean,
I harken back to the Harold Washington era because I wholeheartedly advocate under Harold Washington's motto. To that, but there are people who say that they were Harold Washington, comrades and all that sort of thing. That's always after somebody's dead. They were, the main this and the main that.
That was my guy.
I have never formally met Harold Washington. He came, and spoke at my church in 1987 when he was running, but I never had the opportunity to meet him. But I still felt like we had a friend on the fifth floor during that time, and certainly appreciated his ability and how he was able to, talk about equity and try to do equity without being afraid of, dealing with it or turning off, other groups. Obviously, when he first ran, but I think later on, as he was in, people became more receptive to, hey, my life is not going to be worse because I'm a white guy and we have a black mayor in the city of Chicago. And in fact, in many respects, he used that to say, hey, I'm coming to your community and you're not getting your streets paved because the mayor, your alderman who represents you are voting against policies that I'm trying to come over and fix your streets,
Right.
Get them straight.
Yeah,
So,
they think they're going to make you mad at me.
Right.
I'm trying to, and people got it.
They got it. They absolutely got it.
Yeah.
They absolutely got it. And, they started saying to their alderman, hey, let's get it together. I need these drains fixed so I'm not driving down flooded streets, that sort of thing. But but I think that people are hanging on to that, and it's not going to work because, they haven't modeled that whatsoever.
Man, I was up on the Northwest Side yesterday. I had to run an errand up there, and man, Willie Wilson is spending a lot of money on ads and paperwork. These yard signs.
Mm-hmm.
They're up in Belmont Cragen.
Yes.
That's where I was. All over the place.
Yeah.
Willie Wilson.
More so than it's on the South Side because he's trying to peel off. That group because he knows that he has a certain base on the South and West Side. He has a solidified base that is going down with him or up with him. Whichever way he goes, they're going with him. They're riding with him.
Yeah, I think he's going to. Yeah. That's the only way he can get in the runoff is if he holds his own on the Northwest Side and down on the Southwest Side.
But he's got to get 20% in order
Willie?
to make the runoffs.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it depends on how much Vallis gets. If Vallis gets in the 30s, then that second place guy could probably be. And if there's a tight race for second, he could be 15 to 20. But Willie is doing. No, let's not talk about Willie. Vallis is slipping.
Mm-hmm.
He's slipping among those conservatives in Northwest Side and on the Southwest Side, 19th Ward and such. He's slipping because he's now trying to position himself more in the middle because I think he thinks he's going to be in the runoff and that for him to win the runoff, he's going to have to move to the left. He's going to have to abandon this business with the police union. He's going to have to set them aside. Okay, you guys, cool. I got to go over here and get some of the progressive vote. And I think it's hurt him somewhat. And I think Willie Wilson may be the benefactor of that, or the beneficiary, I should say. But I don't know if it's going to be enough. I'm not predicting a Willie Wilson upset, but that dynamic, I think, right now is in play. And I've talked to people. Who, finance campaigns, and they are somewhat disillusioned with Paul Vallis because he has moved to the left.
Yeah, because there are a lot of people from the right that are pouring money into his campaign. And what happens is...
Into whose campaign?
Vallis's
campaign. But he's not
campaign.
getting as much as he got at the beginning because he's moved to the left.
Maybe so. But that notwithstanding, voters don't like wishy-washiness. They don't like wishy-washiness. You're over here one day, then you're over here like a pretzel.
I agree.
Right?
Who's wishy-washy?
Paul Vallis. He is becoming, he's putting off that, well, wait a minute, I'll say whatever I need to say in order to win you over. Voters are turned off to that.
And the radar goes up.
Yes.
Immediately they
you
hear
can't
it.
Be trusted.
Whoa, wait a minute. You can't be trusted. Exactly. And I think he's getting some of that. I don't know if he's getting so much that it's going to affect his finish. I think he's going to finish number one with a small plurality of votes because let's face it, you can find 15% of the people in this city who will call themselves conservatives. They'll call themselves conservative Republicans, and they live in the Northwest Side and down the 19th Ward and such. Yeah, but they're there, but they can make up enough to get you in the runoff. Now, I think whoever finishes second, whoever it is going to be the favorite in the runoff because they're going to be able to go after those other progressive votes that are now free agents because their person lost.
Well, Brandon Johnson, who I'm voting for, Brandon Johnson and the CTU, and there's one other SEIU, labor group. If they have a strong enough ground game, I wouldn't count Brandon Johnson out.
Look, I looked at those numbers, the 40,000 you mentioned, and I immediately flashed on that, saying, okay, if you're going to harvest ballots, you got to have people to do that. The only one of these candidates that I've seen who has people on the ground, boots on the ground, is Johnson. Johnson, though, to my way of thinking, is going to have a horrible problem in the runoff because if Wallace is his opponent, all Wallace has got to do is start talking about taxes. You start talking about taxing a $1 million house. That ain't much house. You know that. You build houses like that.
Yeah, but I don't think
those aren't mansions.
Yeah, but I don't think that's going to be.
But that's what he said.
He
said mansion tax. He also said tax on incomes over $100,000. Cops make over $100,000 routinely in this city. Firemen make over $100,000 routinely in this city. Those are about as middle class professions as you can get.
Yeah, I don't know. I hear that, but nobody's been able to sustain or verify that to me that he's gonna tax people.
No, go look at his webpage. I read it off his webpage.
Off of 100,000?
He wants to tax, the transfer tax on homes over $1 million. He wants to increase it. A $1 million house is a middle class house in Lincoln Park. That isn't a rich person. That isn't a rich person, huh?
On the sale of
that's if you sell your house,
right?
They take a chunk out of it, and it could be. I don't know how much it would be, but I know
a nominal. It's a nominal.
Oh no, it isn't. It's $4,000, $5,000, $6,000. Believe me, it is. If you're selling a $500,000 house, the city's going to dock you about $5,000 because it's a point. I think is what it is. But the bottom line is, I think that he's very vulnerable because of the this tax issue. Have you seen the documentary that the Illinois Policy Institute has? Okay, they did a. I was part of it. They did a hit job on CTU. Talked about the union and the power that it is.
And for clarification, people, the Policy Institute is a conservative
Brandon is in the documentary, basically saying that the members need to be more radical. You have people in the documentary saying they are communists and socialists, and you have people like Jackson Potter and Jesse Sharkey and the late Karen Lewis. They were talking about some very radical politics. The ad maker for whomever Brandon would face in a runoff is going to have a field day. He's going to have a field day because Brandon is on tape saying this stuff. And it's from 6, 7, 8 years ago, but it's Brandon. And he's saying it, and I think that it's going to hurt him in a runoff. The whole tax piece, because there are a lot of people who've moved in the city, the North Side, who might call themselves young white liberals when they see that tax piece, man, they're going to go the other way.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure that that they're obviously. It depends on who's telling the story, right? Because they're going to certainly slant it, the argument or the campaign to try to support the candidate um, that they want. So, but on the other side of that is that people want their roads repaired. They want their roads repaved, sewer lines, and all of that sort of thing. So this idea that we can govern like you're running a business. You can't govern like you're running a business, right? Because it's not a business. You have to figure out what's needed, and then you have to be able to pay for what's needed. Now, do I believe that there is a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse within our governmental structures? Absolutely. I know that there is. And I believe that we have to do something about that. And we as citizens have to stop tolerating that kind of thing from our government. That's really the force that's going to come, no matter who is the mayor, who is the governor, whoever is in that leadership role, because there is simply too much hustle for the people who are within the system, who are in charge of the system. I think that it certainly works for those people who are within the system more so than it works for the people in and of itself. I think that is something that we just have to do something about as voters.
I look at some of the ads or the ad for Sophia King.
Mm-hmm.
I'm impressed. She seems to have the right tone. She doesn't have any money, so I think that she's been unable to compete, but she has impressed me. As somebody that has possibilities down the road. Incredibly, I mean, I'll say this, and I know I'll get a lot of pushback, but I think Jamal Green has acquitted himself quite well on the debate stage and as a campaigner. I mean, I wish the kid had spent some time, running for alderman, maybe, or maybe even did he finish college at all, or not that makes that big of a difference. But I'm working on.
I don't know.
Maybe he could have worked on his resume more, because that's part of it. I don't think
public resume. You mean?
Well, yeah, his resume where he's been in life, what's he done. I think the voters need to know more of that. Just don't tell me you're an activist. That could mean anything.
Right.
Tell me what you've done. And I don't think he's done that. But in terms of how he's acquitted himself in the debates, I got to give Youngblood a thumbs up. I think you've done well. I think he communicates well. But again, he needs the time to work on that resume, I think.
Well, youth, you can certainly see the youthfulness, which means the lack of experience, just in living experience. I think another thing that people are looking at is the disaster of what happened to the young Black mayor out in Detroit. How just disastrous that with Kwame out in Detroit, and how he just absolutely abused the public's trust in that office, and it was an embarrassment. And I think that people are looking at that and saying, you need a little bit more maturity and need a little bit more experience. Now, to your point, I think that he has done his homework. Whoever is helping him in terms of the research and his ability to articulate those positions in debates, I think he's done formidably well. but I too believe that it's going to be very hard for people to support him as being as young and as experienced. Inexperienced
and
as
Rod
he is.
Sawyer. About Rod Sawyer, man, I don't quite understand what that's about. I mean, I know that people have been talking to Rod Sawyer for years about running for mayor because the guy is, again, he's another person who I believe is a good communicator. We've got someone on the phone.
Yeah, we're gonna take a break before we take that call. Because
okay, just hold on, caller. We're gonna take a break and then we'll come right to you. But again, I don't know. I think I don't know why he's continuing with it. I don't get it because he has no money. He's not going to be on the council. Maybe he figures this is what he has to do.
Maybe this is a good exit strategy.
Maybe it is.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good exit strategy. Well, I think that he believes because he knows government from a administrative, and he knows the rules and all that sort of thing. That
and he knows the traditions.
Right, he knows what the traditions are. But I think he's got some other issues as well. All right, we're going to continue our conversation. We're going to come back with your phone calls at 708-223-8953. You want to get in on the conversation. We'll pick up your phone calls when we come back from this break.
And welcome back to The People Show on Intellectual Radio. My name is Charles Thomas, along with Mark Wallace, and we've been chopping it up about any number of things, issues, stories that are happening in and about our region. You can call us at 708-223-8953. That number again, 708-223-8953. And Mark, we have a caller.
Yes, we do have a caller. Caller, what's your name?
My name is Don, and you know me.
Hey, Don, welcome to the program. What's going on?
I'm calling about Brandon Johnson and how quickly we forget that Brandon Johnson was the teachers union candidate brought in to bring down Richard Boykin after he stopped the sugar tax. They specifically stated, we will run a candidate to bring you down, and now they're running a candidate to be the mayor. No, the city of Chicago and the county of Cook should not be run by the Chicago Teachers Union.
You got no argument from me on that one. I absolutely agree with this caller that it's just too murky at this point. Now, we had Brandon on the air with us a couple of weeks ago, and he said there was a separation and that, in fact, there would be, by 2027, a elected school board, which would run the schools, and the mayor then would be out of the picture. But that's 4 years. That's 4 years of a lot of things that could happen between now and 2027 if the mayor is continued to be part of the if the mayor is a dues-paying member of the Chicago Teachers Union.
What you say is murky, but it's not murky. They specifically announced that they would bring down Richard Boykin and they would run a candidate.
I remember that.
Right. That's not murky at all.
There were other forces. There were other forces in the Democratic Party that wanted Richard Boykin done away with because Richard Boykin supported Mark Kirk over Alexei Janulius in 2010. It was political payback, but the union was only part of that. I just wanted to make that clear.
But now what we see is real Chicago teachers union members who are saying, wait a minute, you didn't ask us, you're mortgaging our pension to give this money to Brandon Johnson without asking us.
Are you a teacher?
No.
I am not a teacher.
Okay.
But you see it going on right now. This does not make sense. We can't prop up candidates like this, put him in, and have us, just because he comes on your show and says the things you want to hear him say, that he's not going to do that. This is clear. It's not murky at all.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that if Brandon should make it to the runoff, this will be the major issue, and crime, of course. But I think this could supersede crime as an issue, because whoever the opponent would be against Brandon Johnson in a runoff will say that, hey, do you want the Chicago Teachers Union to run the city of Chicago? And I think a lot of people will say no. A lot of progressives at that point are going to say, no, we can't have that, because
you raised the thing of the $100,000 tax increase on $100,000 people. 638 teachers in Chicago make over $100,000 a year.
Well, they're going to get taxed according to Brandon.
Exactly. And the last thing that just happened, and it's getting crazier, as Mark knows, I talk about them doing this to us with the lights on. Pritzker just signed a bill that allows Chicago principals to unionize, and says they are not supervisors because they don't handle labor negotiations. How can it, what it begs to is when we had a couple of years ago, the new principal whose school was so dirty and they had to come in and clean up. And she said, well, the janitors don't work for me. The janitors work for, another company. I don't really run the school. What are we doing here?
Well, so if the teachers union is a vehicle, and there are, I know Mark's going to take me out, but there are many socialist leanings, and I'm putting it mildly, in the Chicago Teachers Union. There's going to be there could be as many as 20 socialists on the city council during this next term. Are we moving the city in that direction? And is that where we're going now? Towards socialism, an island of socialism within the larger capitalist society?
I wouldn't call this direction socialism. I would call this really an oligarchy. This is them not doing for the people. This is their own people saying,
yeah, but they say they want to do it for the people, that they want to address issues such as housing, immigration. They want to address other issues with an eye toward redistributing the wealth. Make the rich pay more.
I don't think it's the teachers union job to do that. I think the teachers union job should be to represent teachers. I would like to hear the teachers union once say, we want to teach children. I've not heard that in the last 4 years from them.
They don't
say we want to do anything for children. They say we want to do something for teachers. We want to change the world. But not once do they say we want to teach children.
And the fact that they would keep children out of school for so long during the pandemic, when kids were going to parochial schools and private schools during the same period, and there was no mass death and illness. I mean, they've got to answer to that, but they have the power to do it. And they basically told Lori Lightfoot how she was going to conduct that part of the of the pandemic.
During the pandemic, the Tribune actually in one day ran 2 stories about schools in Chicago. 2 stories, different sections of this paper. One story said what a great job they were doing and were actually graduating more people than they did before the pandemic. The other section said none of them know how to read or write. That said, we're not reaching 20%, access to people being able to read and write, and math was even worse. It's yet nothing in the teachers union platform has said we want to teach children better. It just says we want more and we want to rule the city.
All right. Okay, Don, thanks so much for your call.
Take care, Don.
Appreciate your comments. Yeah. So listen, I'm reading through here and I don't see where Brandon has said that he's going to raise taxes on individual
transfer tax,
$100,000. And no, I see the transfer tax, but I don't see where it says
Well,
that
I've
he
heard him
is
say that.
raising taxes on people who make $100,000 or less. I have heard that people who would be earning $400,000 would be asked to pay a commuter tax if they lived outside of the city, but I haven't seen that in writing in any of his plans.
I think I heard it during one of the debates.
That Brandon said that that's what he would do?
Brandon said that there would be a tax, a city income tax, basically. A city income tax that's part of his financial plan. His plan to raise $1 billion to invest in needed areas around the city, and then they asked, where are you going to get the money? And he put together his financial plan, which included the transfer tax and a tax on income in the city.
Well, what I believe is I think that there needs to be, again, a collaboration between all of the governmental agencies to expand the tax base. This is where I believe that bringing industry back to Chicago and expanding the tax base as opposed to always having to go back to the same pool, getting more and more revenue. I haven't heard that plan concrete from anybody. I haven't heard it from Lightfoot. I haven't heard it from Vallis. I haven't heard it from anybody who has talked about a sensible plan of expanding the tax base. Well, when you talk about expanding the tax base, you're really talking about bringing a private public partnership where you're getting industry to come in for its incentives, bringing their companies that are already making lots of money and bring them to your region so that you could expand the tax base and you have more people in the workforce that are contributing to.
Aren't they trying to do that now?
No,
they aren't trying to do that. I think
who is?
Well, the governor, I certainly is trying to. He tried to get Rivian, the electric. I guess they make electric pickup trucks. He wanted them to expand their plant in Normal, but they decided to go to Georgia. But he's tried other. I don't. First of all, people are leaving Illinois. 105,000 people apparently. That was the net loss in Illinois in 2022. Now, companies aren't coming here. They don't want to come here because they don't think the work environment, the environment for them, will suit their companies. They just won't come.
Yeah, I think that you can work through that. That's all negotiation
stuff.
But
give me one. Give me a company here. I'm down with it, man. It's just that I don't see anybody, chomping at the bit to come to Illinois to pay the taxes and to pay the debt, because Illinois is hundreds of billions of dollars, or well over $100 billion in the red, that somebody's going to have to make up. And companies don't want to sign on to that because they don't want to have to be responsible to pay it.
Well, I think if you expand the tax base, that it's just not the company itself that is doing it. When you expand in the tax base and you have more people who are working and more people who have disposable income, and those people are contributing to the tax base. So it's not just a company that you're bringing in thousands of people. That's what they did, in other states, and it's working.
I hope you're right. I mean, they've lost Boeing, they've lost Tyson Foods, they've lost Caterpillar. Those are three huge companies. Those were the office workers. They weren't. Right. These weren't plants.
Right.
But they've lost those sort of white collar companies already, and I don't know who's come in to fix it. Now, I know that this state has expanded casino gambling,
which is not a panacea at
right?
all.
It has expanded into legalized cannabis, well over hundreds of stores all over the state. And they want to make Illinois a destination for abortions in the Midwest. And apparently that business is booming here because with Indiana, Wisconsin, and Iowa, those states that have toughened their abortion laws in the wake of Roe, those people are now coming to Illinois. But those are the areas that we're growing in: abortion, gambling, and weed. And companies are not coming yet. I mean, I hope you're right. I hope that we can get them to come here. But so far, not so good.
First of all, you asked the question before. There is not a comprehensive plan to get industries to come, in particular in the areas that they need to. They've done some things where the governor has now commissioned a second group, and I don't know, for what. The first group that he commissioned came back to him and said, you should build the third airport. You build a third airport, you attract other companies to bring their businesses in the general area, because it's actually going to avail them to getting their products in and out at a cargo place, which Midway nor O'Hara has the capacity to handle. So, which is why we lost a FedEx plant out to Dallas. We lost a UPS, another UPS plant to, was it Ohio? I believe it is. I can't remember exactly what it is. I have to go back to my notes. But these are the kinds of things that, for whatever political reasons, all right, can't say whatever, but it's all politics, that they won't make the kinds of fundamental decisions to do those things that are going to benefit the entire region. So as opposed to them having these localized thinking, they have to really start thinking more regionally in order to impact and to expand, again, the tax base, rather than just talking about taxing the same groups of people. And I think that it was Brandon who pointed it out, that in many of our communities are being supported by pensioners, that if you remove the pensioners out of the communities, the economies would take a big hit. And that's not sustainable. So you have to do things to expand the tax base, and it can't always be the boogeyman that, companies that don't want to come, because there are companies that are coming here.
Let's when I see them, I'm from Missouri, literally. Show me company moving into Illinois. I can name Citadel.
No, you got to go get them. You got to go get them, and you have to negotiate the deals. You got to negotiate the deals for them to have the incentives to bring their businesses here, where and hopefully they'll make a ton of money as they're making in other areas and other places, and they can have people here working and paying them good wages. And
I don't know what's wrong with Lori. How come Lori didn't get on that, man? And it seems like that would be a great way for her to rehabilitate herself politically by bringing some companies in. I got to believe she's tried, and I got to believe they've said no, because that seems like such an obvious thing to do. But I know the governor's trying.
The problem is this is not something that you can do. First of all, these people don't have the expertise of doing it. They have to bring in people who have the expertise at doing that. They don't have an economic development. The person that Lori Lightfoot has as her economic development person was some kid who just came out of college, out of Connecticut someplace, who didn't know what the heck he was talking about or what he's doing. The first thing that he brought up is about their stellar student program. Well, stellar students don't need assistance. They got people vying for them all over the country. So they have to bring in somebody who has the expertise to do that, to be able to negotiate deals that are going to be beneficial to the governmental bodies, as well as the infrastructure, as well as the people, so that it is a win-win-win situation, as well as the companies that are bringing their businesses. So that means that you have to collaborate with all the factions of government. This just can't be, somebody out on an island on their own saying, well, I'm the big machismo. You got to work with all the layers of government, because it's going to take all the layers of government to accomplish that. And the reason why it's not being accomplished is because too many people in government work on islands.
Well, that's true too. But I think another big problem in terms of attracting companies to Chicago, per se, is that you've got to defeat this image that it's a crime-ridden city. That is hurting Chicago as it tries to market itself around the country, because people associate Chicago with crime. For a while there, it was Michael Jordan. Now it's crime again, and it's got to be stopped. There's got to be, and there has to be a new psyche on the part of people who live here, that we have to believe that it's safer. We have to do that, or companies are not going to move here. They just aren't.
Well, you got to do something to reverse those things that have produced that kind of climate where people, don't feel safe. So you got to do that.
I'm a media person.
Yeah.
And messaging to me is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see anybody messaging like that to people and to institutions in the city. I don't see that.
Or out of the city. What I'm saying is that that work is not being done. And if it is being done, we don't see it being done. And there's no evidence of it being done whenever you travel around the areas that are hardest hit and needs that kind of work. I mean, you have Lori Lightfoot traveling around to the South Side and to the West Side talking about she's putting $2 billion in. She's been in office for 4 years. Not a single project, not a single one has even broken ground. So,
who's her godfather in the business community? I mean, with Daley, it was this guy, Pat Ryan at Aon Insurance. With Rahm, it was Michael Sachs, the hedge fund guy. Who's Lori's money person? Her person, her contact, her point person in the business community?
I don't know who that is.
I don't
know who that is. And, if she has one, maybe they want to stay a secret, but I don't know who that person is if she has one. But, unfortunately, this mayor is just so out of touch and so tone deaf and so abrasive and defensive that I'm not sure that there's any business person that wants to be her go-to person. Maybe there's somebody who tried and was not able to break through with her.
I don't see it. That's for sure. I don't see who that is. And she's got a horrible national reputation as well. I mean, it's not some of the things she said and done, some of these costumes that she put on, she subjected herself to ridicule. And that's of her own doing.
Right.
And I don't understand that she doesn't get it. She doesn't know how silly she looks at times when she's wearing a green cowboy hat, that one where she's like, come on, or she's dancing.
Or saying that she's got the biggest genitals,
yeah.
And that sort of thing. So, but I think that she certainly has demonstrated that she operates in kind of like this silo, right? Like she has to be in this, this chamber. She has had, and I think that I think Crane's Chicago, I wrote an article about it. She's had one of the biggest staff turnovers than any other mayor in history. And I got to believe that that's because the people, even some of the people who wanted to see good things happen, realized that they just couldn't work with this mayor, or that whatever they were bringing to the table, they didn't feel like or see her seeing them as any value.
Yeah, we've got how many days It's 10 days now
Yeah.
before the election.
Yeah, today is 8 days.
8 days.
8 days
before
to
we
the
vote.
well, we call the primary.
I got to go vote. I got to go vote now.
Yeah.
And then,
Well, listen, I am going to cast my ballot on the weekend. I'm going to still give myself a little more time, but I'm pretty sure where I am, I also have to figure out who it is that I'm going to support for alderman in my ward, in the 5th ward, and there are some other people in other wards that I'm looking at as well, and hoping that Michelle Harris gets taken out. The water carrier for, I don't know, but anything could happen. She's certainly the water carrier for Lori, but she's that way of whoever the mayor is, right? She and Emma
she's
Mitz.
A go along, get along.
Yeah, that's their mom. Well, she and Jason Irvin, Emma Mitz, Walter Burnett, Michelle Harris, those are, staunch water carriers for whoever the mayor is. That's, they're going to go with whatever they want.
Yeah, we'll see that.
And they don't make any bones about it.
Well, I mean, there's deals that have been made, and the status quo suits them fine. I get that. It's just that I don't think she's made enough deals that have affected enough people, because these aldermen can go say they support her. I don't think their constituents are going to support her because she hasn't done anything for them. You could do something for the aldermen without doing anything for the people. And
well, we see that happening all the time.
All the time.
Right? We see that happen all the time, because I say, when I go back in Michelle Harris, let's just take her for example. She talks about, and bragged about it at the groundbreaking, that it's not my fault if you don't, get anything with the mayor, and she's never said no to me. But when I look at her ward, what has she said yes to? What has she done in your ward? What have you received? There was a senior citizens home that was already in the plan before she came into office on 94th and Stony Island. What has she done in your ward? What? That's what I look at. The bigger picture, transformative, not a little coffee shop or some hamburger joint that's been with a sign up there saying that it's going to happen for the last 4 years and still hasn't happened. But, that's the kind of thing that they go out and campaign on. They campaign on that sort of stuff, and people just buy it because you got some new garbage cans up and down your alley or something like that.
Garbage cans, I'll go for that.
Well, you got to have garbage cans
if that's what you do. I mean, a lot of it also has to do with how responsive an alderman can be when they get a call and how they respond. And the aldermen, I think that, some of them do a better job than others, to be honest. And
you mean responding to
constituents? Yeah. I need a new garbage can. Bam, you got it. Well,
you can call 311 and get that. You don't need the alderman for that.
But they call the alderman for that. And when the alderman, when it shows up, they credit the alderman for that.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's simplistic politics, but that's how it works in a lot of neighborhoods for a lot of people.
Well, the problem is that we don't have people in these positions, alderman, mayor, commissioners. They just don't have the we can win big ideas. They don't have that. They think a big idea is that they give some money to an anti-violence organization. Where is the anti-violence groups in white communities? Where are those organizations? Why do they have anti-violence organizations in white communities?
You're a lot more plugged in than I am. Does Black Lives Matter have an office in Chicago that I could go to or call or?
No, they got a big mansion that they bought out in California someplace.
What's up with that?
So I don't know whether or not they have
but I've
office.
never noticed an office or a phone number or anything, any local promotion for Black Lives Matter. I know they raised, was it $90 million in the summer of 2020.
Yeah, something like that.
But I don't know that there was ever anybody in Chicago who opened an office, or can I call Black Lives Matter and get an answer about anything?
I couldn't tell you.
What's up with that? I mean, how have they run a scam like that on people?
Well, with the George Floyd thing, you mean?
Well, I mean, nobody's gone to jail if that money's missing.
Well, I don't know. The money's not missing. The money's not missing. They used the money to purchase, a multi-million-dollar place out in California someplace, and do some other things. I think that, obviously if you follow the rules, the IRS rules in terms of how you appropriate the funds, then you can pay yourself, good salaries, but I'm not sure of where it is. This money that they raised, I think, they had a big donor from, I think, a big donation from George Soros or something like that donated a lot of money to it. Listen, a lot of this money flows through, like the grant thing is another campaign or vote buying mechanism that's used even here in Chicago at the state level, where you have all these organizations. And really the grant thing, the big operators, the big non-for-profits are the ones who really get the grant money, the big lion's share of the grant money, because smaller operators don't have the capacity to meet the requirements for getting a grant. Because if you get a grant for, say, $200,000 or $500,000, you've got to spend the money first, and then it's reimbursed to you. You don't get the money up front. Yeah, you have to spend the money, and then you get it back, or you have matching funds that you have to put out, and then you get reimbursed. So a lot of the money on with these grants don't go to the organizations in the neighborhoods. A lot of that goes to the big non-for-profits downtown who can afford to do that because they have relationships that they can put the money out, and so they get the big grant money. But the smaller operators, very few of them, right? So those people are what I consider to be, the pass-throughs or the 2%ers that for campaign purposes.
Yeah. It says here that Black Lives Matter does not have. It had a website, but the IP address for this domain may have changed recently. Apparently, they don't. They don't even have a website. If anybody knows their website, please call us 708-223-8953, 708-223-8953. I'm trying to contact Black Lives Matter in Chicago to find out where they are. Maybe we can have them on the show.
Yeah, there was a person that I thought was supposed to be the spokesperson for, the Chicago chapter or whatever it is that they're supposedly doing. And for me, again, if we're going to be dealing with that, and yes, we have, to deal with the issues of inequities or, justice matters. But I think that there are bigger things that have to be dealt with that are like economic issues that need to be addressed as well.
What do you mean?
In terms of Black Lives Matters or these groups that are funded. So, I want to see more collaboration between the governmental factions. I want to see the mayor. I want to see the Cook County Board president and the governor getting together and bringing in all of these agents, because we have all these.
So why don't they do that now? I mean, they're right there.
Because it's a hustle for them. It's a hustle for them. It's not a benefit for you and I as the taxpayer. It's a hustle for them. And we're, to a large degree, we allow for this to happen. We allow for this to continue to happen to us, where, they kind of dictate to us who's going to be our representatives. And, and they'll say, well, okay, well, this is the group that you have to vote from. Well, why can't we pick our own group? Why can't we pick our own group of candidates that we want? Forget about, you putting some people. Why can't we do that ourselves?
But that would require a new political party, right?
No.
Why not?
No, you don't need a new political party. We just need to organize
Maybe
ourselves,
by name,
and
but
we
the
can.
organization certainly would be a political party. I mean,
It
you
doesn't
would be
have to
doing
be.
the same things.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be a new party. We can pick our own people to work within the confines of the political structure that's already set up, but to work for the people. We don't have to recreate a whole nother party. We pick our own people to put them in.
You have meetings of like-minded people, and you get together and you decide who will best represent the people.
The people, yes.
But isn't that what a political party is supposed to do?
That's the operative word you just said. They're supposed to do that, but they don't do that. When's the last time?
So why wouldn't you just go get another political party to do that?
No, just get rid of the people who are supposed to be that are not doing and put in some new people.
That's very difficult.
No, it's not.
Because they're going to control who gets to run the party.
No.
And who gets to run the election.
No, we control that. Once we start,
once
we get ourselves organized where we can start saying, you get to go into office and you're coming out. That means that we're so organized that we can vote people in and we can vote them out. That's where the real power is.
I agree, but it seems like that's going to take a political party to go up against the powers that be. Power. What's the assignment? That power does not concede anything
without a demand. It didn't say it didn't concede it because you need a new party. You just need a demand.
Well,
and the demand has to be a bunch of organized people. That's why unions are so strong, because they have the ones that are strong. Why? Because they are organized. We have the numbers. We just have to organize ourselves in a way and get beyond, some of the minutia that we get tied up in, and just allow ourselves at least to get organized, right? To put the fear into these people, whether they're whatever they are, Democrat, independent, whatever, they're not working for the people. We have got to organize ourselves to have that kind of strength to put the fear in those people that we will do away with you.
My brother, I should hope that you can do that. It's just that I think there will be, for every action, there is a reaction. And what they use as reaction in Chicago and Cook County, not only do they kill you, they burn the body. I mean, that is how ruthless they can be. And I mean, I'm with you all the way. I mean, although I think that organization is in effect a political party, a new political party, in order to be able to do that, and it could just be a temporary political move that you have to do in order to stand up to these people, because everything you say is true about them. They do not serve the people. They serve themselves, but they will continue to serve themselves and use what power they have to keep their power. That's my biggest concern.
Well, of course they're going to do that. And as long as they can keep us fractionized, and as long as they can keep us believing that we can't organize ourselves, that we have to go through, some complicated process to do that, they will. And as long as we stay fractionized, they count on that. They count on it. They count on us being fractionized
and divided.
They just swallow us up.
They divide us by race. They divide us by sexual orientation. They divide us by nationality. They're dividing us constantly, and we can't get we can't get anything done. And we have, people like this one thing struck me one time. I heard Nancy Pelosi, that's former Speaker of the House. She was on the floor and she was talking about white supremacy and how white supremacy is a bedrock problem in America, and that there is an upsurge of it, and that something needs to be done about it.
Well, the FBI said that.
No, she said that. I
She
heard her
said it,
that.
but the FBI is
whatever.
who
The
made
FBI,
that
they
determination.
whatever
based
credibility they have
yeah.
or don't. But white supremacy. Now I look at her and I'm going, you live in a $25 million house in San Francisco. You have a winery that you can go to on weekends that you own in Napa Valley. And you have a multi-million-dollar condo in Washington. Your husband is a $200 million whatever hedge fund guy. You're white and you are supreme in terms of dollars. You got it like that. So, but she can call Billy Bob in Podunk, Alabama, who rides a pickup truck with a Confederate flag on the back and sticker, call him a white supremacist, but she's not. Billy Bob in Podunk, Alabama, he doesn't impress me. I ain't afraid of him. He's got nothing. If he's on the street and he calls me the N-word, I'm like, you? I mean, seriously. Not that he ever did, but she's the white supremacist. Nancy Pelosi is the white supremacist. You name them. Joe Biden is a white supremacist.
He is?
Yeah, he's got a crib in Delaware on the beach. He's got a big crib that they're searching for classified documents. He's worth millions of dollars. Yeah, he's supreme.
So they're
not
all
Billy Bob.
So they're all white supremacists.
I'm saying it's elitists.
Well, that's
probably elitists.
A better word. That's probably a better
These
term.
are elitists calling other people white supremacists when they are as big, or if not a bigger problem than some rube riding around in a pickup truck with a shotgun rack in it. I'm concerned about you and all them bodyguards you got with you constantly. You talking about climate change, but you build yourself a house on Martha's Vineyard right on the beach. Well, I thought that was going to wash away. Barack, well, you way on beach, man.
Well,
it's elitism.
Elitism is
as big a problem as white supremacy ever was. In fact, I think elitism is a bigger problem.
Well, of course, because you've got three people, three or four people who own more wealth in this country than the bottom 1/2 of the population. Right?
Elitists.
That's a problem.
Certainly.
Yeah, it's a big problem. So,
but the politicians seem to be lining up with the elitists as opposed to
well, of course, they fuel their campaigns.
The next president of this country, great president, whether he's a Democrat or a Republican, and I sincerely mean that, whether he could be a Democrat, is somebody that can get that guy Billy Bob on Podunk, Alabama, to understand that he and Ray Ray on the west side of Chicago are in the same boat, and that their true enemy is not each other, as I see all these race hustlers doing, trying to pit black against white people, poor black people against poor white people, when in fact, the danger are the super wealthy, who are, again, the elitists who are manipulating this situation to make us fight each other.
Well, that you're talking about an oligarchy is what we have set up now, that are allowing for, capitalism, which is working great for the capitalist, right? It's working great for the capitalist, not working for the rest of America, but it's working great for the capitalist. But that is the system that has been put into place and continued to be protected by these elitists, right? They're the corporatists on both sides of the aisle that are protecting the same systemic issues that the average person is having a hard time. I think I read an excerpt in Bernie Sanders' book that's coming out that 60% of average working Americans, 60% of the middle class are living from paycheck to paycheck today.
Right.
Today.
Right?
And that just should not be when you hold on a second, when you have corporations raking in record profits, insurance, you name it, oil, all of them raking in record profits. The CEOs now earning more than 800 times the average employee. I mean, you got a CEO who makes in a week what does that like the average 10 employees make in a lifetime. That's just it's just true, outrageous.
That's how that's how they roll. But I see the people in Washington basically serving themselves, and they're using division. They're using divisions in order to move their agenda forward, which is I find that abhorrent.
Well, I find that is I agree with that. To some
further yourself politically. Yes. I can't, and I don't care who does it, whether you're a Republican, whether you're a Democrat, but they're all doing it. Both sides are doing it, and it's shameful. And I think that somebody has got to step forward to say, "Hey, time out. This isn't how we're going to play. We're going to have some rules."
But that's got to come from the people, Charles. And it's got to come from the people, and the people, have to organize ourselves to say that, hey, we're not going to allow for them to use us this way or misuse us this way. And the government is supposed to be, for the people, of the people. Then the people we need to get ourselves together to turn this around and put a stop to it.
Well, it's going to have to, it's going to take, social media can be used to that end. Unfortunately, it's not being used at this point to that end, but it can be used where we can communicate among ourselves. But then you have the big media companies like your Facebook and your Twitter who are basically interfering with people speaking to each other and basically airing it out. And that's troubling to me. That is troubling because you censor one person because of something they said. Well, who made the call to censor them? Who was it? They can't answer the question, or they don't want to answer the question. But I've seen too much of that over these last 5 years or so, where people get put in Facebook jail. I mean, I have regular folks. They're in Facebook jail because they said something that was misinformation, as they call it. And the people making the determination as to what is misinformation, they don't have any clue as to what the correct information is. Or is there correct information? Or is it a matter of people having to debate? It's a tragic situation.
Well, it's tragic because, and it's tragic for one reason, is that we will not change. We will not change. We spend too much time, and we say, and you're saying, and I agree, that these elitists are doing this at the top, and we know it, but we spend so much time fighting each other over splitting hairs over, a D or an R, when in fact, they're just, they're both playing us. To that degree, everywhere. They're both playing us. So, but, we got a great example here in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Great example of that here in Chicago is that, we allow for these people to do what they're doing because somehow we are convinced that, they're going to kill us or they're going to bury us. They can't kill us all.
Who's going to kill us? Who's going to bury us?
the people who are heading up our government, if we go to overturn what they're doing, if we somehow organize ourselves, that somehow they're going to take us out. I just,
they you got to be careful. You got to be careful about.
I don't have to be careful.
You don't, but I mean, there are people who do.
Why?
And why? Because they can lose their jobs.
Oh, I'm not talking.
I'm not
talking about. Listen, I'm not talking about that sort of thing. I think that there is a way for even the people who are working to be able to be a part of an organized group without jeopardizing. I'm not suggesting that. However, that when you have a group of people who have organized themselves well enough, we can protect those people's jobs. We can protect those people's jobs because the people who are hiring are the people who need our votes.
That's confidence. That's confidence, and you believe that. That's good. But a lot of people will not speak out. They won't come out and say these things because they have jobs, they have children at home that have to be fed, they got a mortgage, they got a car note.
We don't need them.
And they don't want to get involved because it's this in cancel culture that can happen to you. You say the wrong thing,
but you can be supportive. You can be supportive without being known that you. Everybody doesn't have to be on the front line.
You got to be out front. You got to say what you want at some point.
But that's why you have spokespersons to be able to speak on behalf.
I don't have one.
Well,
I have to speak on my own. And
if you want to live in a silo, then that's our problem.
Things I disagree with, I gotta speak out. I mean, and I do. But I'm also 72 years old, and I'm kind of beyond that phase of life. But when I was 40, would I be out here talking a lot of smack about a lot of stuff? I don't know. I'd probably not. I don't think I'd go out there and fall on my sword at age 40 when I was trying to get 2 kids to college and I was trying to pay the house note and everything. I mean, it's just,
I'm not saying that everybody has to go and fall on a sword. I'm not suggesting that everybody has to go and fall on a sword. I think there's a way to be able to organize so that they don't have to jeopardize their livelihood because they're talking about some inequities or some injustice that's happening. I mean, some of the people that are being taken advantage of right here in Chicago. I know a young lady who worked for former Commissioner Bobby Steele, who told me that they had to purchase a certain amount of tickets to campaign events to the tune of a certain amount of money. At that time, I think it was like $10,000. So you get a salary of, say, $70,000, but that's not really your salary because 10,000 of that, you got to purchase a certain number of tickets. If that sort of thing is going on, that's easily traceable. If that sort of thing is going on,
stopped though.
It should.
George Ryan went to jail for that, something like that. That selling.
Yeah. Or hopefully it's if that sort of thing is going on. I mean that is, they should be jailed. They should be jailed.
It used to go on all the time. Man. I mean, they accused Dorothy Brown of having something like that, Blue Jeans Day or something like that. If you didn't, you had to pay, or something like that. There was some money involved.
Yeah.
And the bottom line, it ended up as money that would be put in a campaign fund. Yeah. But they've done stuff like that, and I think they're chipping away at it, calling it out one by one. But it still goes on, and I'm sure there are new scams now that they're using.
Sure, I'm sure there is. Like intimidation tactics that people are being pressured with. But I still contend that is because we are allowing for them to be this boogeyman that they are not.
Allowing who to be the boogeyman?
The people that we have given, entrusted our governments with.
Well, they are the boogeyman.
Yeah. Well,
it's just that they fool us every every 2 to 4 years, we get fooled again into doing the same thing over again, and we get the same result. And that's been going on now for what, 50, 75 years, over and over and over again. And I'm not accepting it anymore. I'm not going to individually, I'm not accepting it. I'm doing what I can do to break the cycle, to let them know that no, it's no guarantee. And hopefully, more people are going to join the fight.
Well,
I would hope.
I hope so. I hope that we can organize ourselves. I hope that there could be such a fed upness to we decide, you know what? I'm not attaching myself to anybody. I don't care what your name is. I'm not attaching myself to you. We're going to get ourselves together and we're going to pick. You might be somebody that we would pick, but we're not talking to you right now. We're going to go have a conversation ourselves. We're going to organize ourselves first, and then we're going to determine who we're going to give the opportunity.
You need a lot of
work
money
for
for
us.
that.
Well, you can raise it. That's what the whole 10 by 10 to win campaign was about. 10 people getting 10 people, each person put in $1. If we did it 5 times, we raised $1 million. If we did it 5 times over, we raised $1 million. It wasn't my idea by myself. I came up with the whole 10 by 10 thing, but there were some other people who came in and gave me suggestions. Then, because I was just basing it on people participating.
So what did you need that you didn't get?
I didn't get enough participation so that it became a we thing. We didn't get enough participation in it, because I just believe that if we could get enough participation to be an example to the broader audience, then we could organize and to show people, hey, we can have some real power. If we could do it in that small group, we can do it in a larger group and have broader power.
All it took from an individual was $1.
That's it. That's all it takes. Just look at it. But basically, 10 people getting 10 people is 100 people. That's $100. 100 people get 10 people. That's $1,000. That's 1,000 people. 1,000 people get 10 people. That's $10,000. $10,000. 10,000 people get 10 people. That's 100,000 people. $100,000. One more time. 100,000 people get 10 people. You now have 1 million people and $1 million. And you can do it over and over again. That's real power. Can you imagine having a million people in Chicago, in Illinois? That's a lot of power. We got to talk about that. We really have to talk about that and institutionalize it, because we can make a lot of changes.
Yep. Earl, you playing us off? You've been listening to the People Show on Intellectual Radio. My name is Charles Thomas. I've been chopping it up with my good friend Mark Wallace. We're pretty tame this week, man. We didn't really have too many points on which we differ deeply.
Sometimes we'll do that, but in all of our differing, the goal is to bring equity to our people. And all of our differing is not to see, who can get you. Our differing is to come up with a solution.
We got 2 roads.
Build our people.
2 roads headed to the same place. Your road goes to the left of the mountain. My road goes to the right. But we're trying to get to the other side where we can have peace and prosperity.
And equity and prosperity. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
That's what we're here to, not to fight.
We'll see you next Monday, 7 p.m. right here on Intellectual Radio.